Thank you for watching a special edition of the East West Football Podcast. I am Fidel Barraza. Along with me tonight, the fantasy guru, Isaac Durham. Isaac, how you doing?
Pretty good. Excited. Doing a lot of mock drafts right now, getting ready for that fantasy season coming up.
Yeah.
The preseason is finally back. We went a full year without it. So, there's a lot of talk right now, a lot of, scouting the preseason, trying to find the right guys, trying to find a strategy before, all of our drafts coming up.
Yeah. Well, hey, Isaac. Well, the regular season is just around the corner. A lot of people are already doing their fantasy football drafts. So without, taking any more time, let's talk about fantasy football.
Let's do it. I'm excited.
All right. So let's start off with the quarterbacks. Obviously, there's a lot of different ones that you can choose from. Who would you say would be your top 5?
Well, I've been ranking each position for the East West Football Network. The articles have been posting on the website. So, right now I've been kind of safe with my rankings. You can always project that guy that's going to take a big leap. A lot of people didn't see Josh Allen finishing as high as he did last year. I think it had him ranked 10th going into last season, and then he finished as the quarterback 1 after Kyler Murray pretty much served as the quarterback 1 for most of the season. But I was safe, and I picked your boy, Patty Mahomes, number 1 for fantasy.
He's my boy.
Your boy. I don't like his average draft position, though. Right now, he's looking at a second-round quarterback. I think you can find a lot of talent in the later rounds, like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray going in that 4th or 5th round. I don't see the gap, that large. So, taking Mahomes second round is a risk, but it's also, a safe bet. You can count on him to get you 20 to 30 fantasy points each and every week. And there aren't a lot of people that disagree with taking Mahomes. And he has that, rushing ability as well that brings another element to his point total. And then let's look. So I got Kyler Murray 2. Like I said, the separation isn't, large. Before he had that shoulder injury last season, he served as the quarterback 1 between weeks 9 and 16, I believe. Those last couple of weeks, he dealt with that injury. So that created the opportunity for Josh Allen to kind of catch him. But he's a guy that, can just take off in an instant. He's got great rushing abilities. He's fast. He's got a big arm, and he's got great pass catchers surrounding him. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is an elite wide receiver. You bring in a guy, an AJ Green, that, could, revitalize his career playing alongside or opposite side of Hopkins. And then you got guys like Christian Kirk, rookie Rondale Moore, and Andy Isabella also. And then he's got 2 running backs that can also catch out of the backfield, and James Conner and Chase Edmonds. So I think Kyler Murray would be a safe bet to finish in the top 5. I already brought up Josh Allen, the guy that finished as the quarterback 1 last season. I have him as my QB3 going into the season. And then Lamar Jackson right behind him as my quarterback 4. You always want those guys that can run the ball as well as pass the ball, and all 4 of those guys obviously do so. Lamar being, one of the best at doing the rushing part. And then at the 5 spot, I got Russell Wilson, the guy that was very dominant at the beginning of last season. Throughout the first 8 weeks, he was the quarterback 1, and then he started to kind of calm down a little bit, and Seattle tried to run the ball a lot more, and they did so, and it actually worked. But I see him as a potential top 5 quarterback as well this season. And then other guys to keep in mind, Dak Prescott, the reigning MVP, and Aaron Rodgers, and also maybe a Justin Herbert as well.
Well, let me ask you something real quick. What about a quarterback that not a lot of people are talking about, but you see a huge upside on?
Yeah, and so when I think of a guy that could, finish in that top 10, I think of a guy who has the ability to run the ball, and I think of Ryan Tannehill. He finished as the quarterback 7 last season, an underrated player who consistently put up great fantasy numbers. There's always the stigma that people don't want to draft him because they always think about his Miami days. But, as a Tennessee Titan, he's been one of the more, viable fantasy quarterbacks in this league. Another guy to keep in mind is Tom Brady, the guy that never ages.
The GOAT.
The GOAT. You can find him right now in the 8th or 9th round in most mock drafts. And, he was a top 5 fantasy quarterback last season as well. So to get a guy that late with that value will set your team up for, a lot of success.
Let's see. It looks like we have a question from Max. Let's put it up. Do I offer A-Rod, Miles Sanders for Henry?
In a standard league, 100%. Because Derrick Henry could, outside of Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry could be the running back 1 in fantasy for standard leagues. In PPR leagues, he is a little bit of a risk because he doesn't catch the ball that much. And, there's that potential of an injury with such a large workload. But I would say that I would still do it in a PPR league as well, because Allen Robinson is, although he usually finishes in the top 15.
Normal PPR scoring.
PPR scoring. So I would still do it because Allen Robinson hasn't been that consistent. He consistently finishes in the top 15, top 20 range in PPR leagues, but you have those weeks where he doesn't really show up. And Miles Sanders, he had all that hype coming into the league. He had a decent rookie season. He was supposed to take over as Philadelphia's, lead back last season. And he was also inconsistent. So you might as well get that consistency in Derrick Henry, one of the, more dominant fantasy running backs.
All right, Max, thank you so much for the question. And if anyone else out there watching us does have a question for Isaac, make sure you guys leave a comment and we'll answer those questions for you as well.
Yeah, ask away. Go ahead.
Yep, we got all night. We got nothing else to do. All right, Isaac. So let's maybe talk about a quarterback that a lot of people are expecting to have a great year that you think let's hit the brakes there a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of people are high on Trey Lance and Justin Fields, and I think they will be good fantasy quarterbacks eventually, but there's that uncertainty. Are they going to start right away? Is Chicago going to, start Andy Dalton for most of the season? Then you kind of wasted a pick in Fields. You could have picked him up later. Yeah. San Francisco keeps reiterating that they want to play Jimmy G. They don't have to rush Trey Lance in. And, as exciting as those two players are, maybe, grab them in a dynasty league, but in a redraft league, I'm not really targeting them. And then I still see Desean Watson being drafted in mock drafts, and there's that uncertainty with him. Is he going to play this season? Is he even going to play, for the Texans? Will they trade him if all the allegations get dropped? So those are, 3 guys that I'm staying away from. A lot of hype around Matthew Stafford, a guy that, is joining a better offense over there in Sean McVay's scheme, but he doesn't bring that running element. He doesn't really finish, towards the top of the pack in the fantasy rankings each and every year. There's a lot of hype surrounding him from his head coach, so I'm not so high on him either. And that's about it as far as the guys that I'm avoiding.
All right, and then we got Max back in the chat. I got Robbie Anderson and Devontae Smith on the bench and MT on IR, so I'll be set.
Yeah, I like Robbie Anderson. He's kind of a my guy. Not a lot of people realize that he topped 1,000 receiving yards last season. And, they lost Curtis Samuel. I don't know how much of a factor Terrace Marshall is going to be as a rookie. So DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson are going to see a lot of targets. Now their targets should decrease a little bit because Christian McCaffrey's coming back, but I still like Anderson where he's at. His ADP is around, the 10th round right now. So he's definitely my guy for me.
Yeah, and let's not forget too. I mean, Sam Darnold and him used to be old teammates with the New York Jets, and that was one of his favorite targets. So
that was his top target.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the running backs, Isaac.
Okay. So do you want the top running backs first?
Yes, let's do the top.
I think it's crazy when I see people drafting anyone besides Christian McCaffrey number 1 overall.
So let me ask you this. Who have you seen people draft instead of Christian McCaffrey?
Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara.
Really?
And I get why people are drafting Dalvin Cook. People are kind of worried about Christian McCaffrey and his injuries from last season. But people forget he was, healthy at times, and they decided to shut him down because, they finished with 5 wins on the season. I mean, there's no reason to rush your guy back when your team's not performing.
I think it was the game against Tampa Bay, if I'm not mistaken, where he came back, but then he
hurt his shoulder.
That's what it was, and then kept him out.
And then there was rumors saying that, he could have played 2 weeks later, but
they didn't want him to.
Why not just rest him, get him ready for this season? He's still, one of the most exciting players in this league. And the last time we saw him, no one came anywhere close to him in point totals as far as fantasy points.
Yeah, no.
So go ahead and draft him number 1 still. He never had an injury problem before last season. And like we said, that shoulder injury wasn't a big injury. They just didn't want to rush him back. So Dalvin Cook, to me, is the running back 2 off of my board, at least. He finished with over 1,500 rushing yards last season, 16 rushing touchdowns. I mean, just a crazy season. And Minnesota was passing more than they were running in most weeks because they're allowing, 40 points a game, something crazy like that. So for him to, still pass that 1,500 mark, still run the ball in 16 times, I think he's a safe bet. And, let's say they do pass the ball more. Okay, well, he is an elite pass catcher as well. He's had, back-to-back seasons, or really 3 seasons in a row of 40 receptions or more. So I like Dalvin Cook there. And then I got Alvin Kamara just slightly behind them. This is a guy that started out his career with 3 seasons in a row of 81 receptions. Then last year he had 83 receptions. He also had a 6-touchdown game. And, Drew Brees is gone. Michael Thomas is banged up. All the other receivers are hurt too. So who else is going to, run through that offense? We don't know who the quarterback is. Let's say it's Taysom Hill. He's going to check the ball down.
Know.
Let's say it's Jameis Winston. Who's he going to pass to? I mean, you got Adam Trotman, the tight end, the second-year tight end. You got guys like Marquez Callaway and Traquan Smith.
Well, Traquan Smith, he just got in trouble this past weekend, so who even knows how many games he's going to be suspended for? So
yeah, who knows who is going to be on the field? All I know is Kamara's going to be on the field, and he's going to have a heavy workload. So I think he's a safe bet inside that top 5, top 3 range in fantasy running backs. And then you got King Henry right behind them. Like I said, in standard leagues, he could be the top running back in fantasy.
He would have to be. I mean, in my opinion.
Yeah, he topped 2,000 rushing yards last season. Yeah. Now he had 378 carries, which is just ridiculous. I don't see them, giving him the ball that many times on the ground, especially, adding Julio Jones. But adding a Julio Jones could benefit Henry even more because I mean, how are you going to focus on Derrick Henry, Julio Jones, and A.J. Brown all at the same time? You can't.
Well, I mean, to me, Julio Jones, I mean, him being on the field might be an issue, maybe, possibly. He's the older player, so, I mean, who knows? But, yes, excellent point.
I mean, he's still Julio Jones. Defenses are gonna look at him and go, yeah, this guy's still got it. As long as he's healthy, that's the big thing.
That's the biggest thing.
And that's where Derrick Henry scares me. I just have this feeling that this could be the season where he does, suffer an injury just because he's had 2 seasons in a row where he's touched the ball more than 315 times.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I mean, he's still dominant. Everyone knows he is. So he's 4th on my rankings as far as PPR. And then, earlier on I had Saquon kind of up there, but it doesn't seem like he's fully healthy yet. I know he just recently came off the PUP list, but they might not,
I don't think they want to rush him back.
Yeah, I don't think they want to rush him back, and I don't think he's going to touch the ball 30 times in his first game. So I could see a bounce back year for Zeke, though. That offensive line is healthy again.
Interesting.
Dak Prescott should be back. And, Zeke wasn't the same player last year once Dak went down because he was the offense. And, I mean, he can't be the number 1 guy in that offense. He's had such a high workload through his first 4 or 5 years. So I think he's going to benefit a lot. I think he's going to be very involved in the passing game as well. So that's where I like him. And then, and Aaron Jones as well. I wasn't high on him until we heard that Aaron Rodgers was coming back. So I like Aaron Jones. I like Austin Eckler, a guy that, 2 seasons ago had 92 receptions for 993 yards and 8 touchdowns. Herbert's going to have to target him a lot now that Hunter Henry's gone. Mike Williams is dealing with an injury, so all he has is Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
And then an old Jared Cook. So I like Eckler a lot too. A lot of people are sleeping on David Montgomery. He is projected to be drafted in the late 3rd, early 4th right now. And this is a guy that served as the running back 1 in the last 5 weeks of last season.
Yeah.
And I'm a Bears fan. I know.
I couldn't tell with your Bears poster.
Yeah. Here we go. I'll block it real quick.
All right.
I'll block it all.
All right.
David Montgomery is still stud. Okay.
Hey, it's not. I don't like the Raiders either, man.
Yeah.
Right.
Dave Montgomery, once Tariq Cohen went down last year with an ACL tear, started to catch a lot of passes. He went from 25 receptions in his rookie season to 54 in his second season.
Well, it's one of the reasons why the Bears made the playoffs.
He was the main reason why.
Yeah.
You can't say that Mitch Trubisky was the reason. I mean, he played a lot better, but David Montgomery was that offense. And then Matt Nagy's stating that he wants to give Montgomery 20-plus carries a game. I don't know if he's going to do that because on his hot stretch, he was averaging like 18. But for him to be drafted in the 4th round, I mean, if you get him there, that's exceptional value, especially if you can get 2 running backs before him. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going to be very well off. And then you have, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, all those guys. Antonio Gibson, I really like too, because there have been talks that he's going to be the 3rd down back as well as being the 1st and 2nd down back. And he was a wide receiver in college. So expect his receiving numbers to go up. And then, your boy, Josh Jacobs.
Got to show some love.
Got to show some love. People are sleeping on him hard right now because Kenyon Drake's on the team. Now, are you worried about Jacobs' workload with Drake being added to this team?
Here's where my concern comes in. The last couple of years that he's been in the league, towards the end of the year, he's gotten injured. Mm-hmm. And we haven't had a good, I guess, solid backup, I guess you can say, right? I mean, we had Booker last year, but kind of dwindled off. He wasn't bad, but towards the end of the year, kind of dwindled off a little bit. So, I mean, I like what Kenyon Drake brings to the table for the Raiders. I mean, just with the running game and also catching the ball. So, look, I'm not worried about Jacobs because he's going to get his touches.
Yeah, he's just not going to catch a lot of passes though, and he hasn't really caught a lot of passes so far in his career. But he's been amazing on the ground, and I can see him, rushing for 8-9 touchdowns this season. So I think people are sleeping on him as well.
All right. Well, give me a name that stock is high, but you don't know if it's there.
A lot of people like James Conner.
Who? And why would you like James Conner?
I've seen James Conner being drafted in, 8th round right now, and I think Chase Edmonds is the lead back on that team.
Without a doubt.
People are thinking, James Conner going from, one of the worst offensive lines in Pittsburgh, going to Arizona, much improved offensive line, playing with a better offense. I think he's going to be that short down bruiser. He's had too many injuries for me to really believe in him. Yeah. And Edmonds didn't take over when Drake was hurt last season in Arizona. But he's a great pass catcher, and I think he's going to be heavily involved. And this team's going to love to pass the ball, and they're not really going to predicate on the running game that much. There's some hype surrounding Zack Moss right now. Apparently, he's shaken up a little bit right now, but he could take over ahead of Devin Singletary as Buffalo's lead back.
I don't like that Buffalo Bills backfield. I really don't.
I don't dislike the players. It's just Buffalo gives up on the run very easily.
Josh Allen's like the running back.
Josh Allen is the running back.
Yeah,
he leads the team in rushing. almost
All right.
every week.
All right, so we got real quick, Isaac
Okay,
Lizo. Can you guys rate my 12-man PPR team?
let's,
Sure.
let's see it.
Let's see it. All right, once it gets that on, I'll put that back on the screen. But like I was
Okay.
telling you, I mean, Josh Allen is the running back for the Buffalo Bills, and I felt like that was an area they could have, really put an emphasis on during this offseason, and they really didn't.
They brought in Matt Breida. I mean, they drafted Devin
But
Singletary. They drafted Singletary 2 seasons ago. They drafted Moss last season. How many guys do you need to draft? And they don't need like a stud running back. They do just fine without really enforcing that running game.
But I think that was one of the reasons why they lost to Kansas City last year as well in the AFC Championship game, because they couldn't run the football.
They couldn't run it, but they gave up on it. First quarter?
Yeah,
second quarter.
Well,
I mean,
they got ahead like by 10 points, right? And then we
yeah.
knew what happened after that. All right, so we got Lizo's roster up. So we got Dak, Cook, Gaskin, Ridley, Debo, Waller, Lamb, Buckner, Rams defense, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Bench, Lawrence, Goddard, Gage, Moss, and Chase.
The bench looks solid. Let's go back to that starting lineup real quick.
So,
okay, so obviously Dak is a question mark, but I still like him in fantasy as long as he can stay healthy. You can replace him if he doesn't work out. Last season I had him, and I ended up winning one of my leagues by picking up Ryan Tannehill to replace him for the rest of the year. We already talked about Cook. He's a stud. He's going to finish top 3 if healthy. Gaskin's stock is kind of dwindling a little bit after watching that preseason game. They really used Malcolm Brown a lot in that game. And I know it's the preseason, but we were talking before the show, Brian Flores likes the approach of a 3-headed monster with Ahmed as well.
Yeah.
Gaskin does catch the ball very well out of the backfield. We saw a season last year where he was the only running back really involved when he was on the field. But I don't know. I could see Gaskin, really dropping off this season, especially if Malcolm Brown, takes over as that short yardage guy that gets all the inside the 5 touches, the rushing touchdowns. We go to Ridley. I love Calvin Ridley. Some people are a little scared because they thought, Calvin did what he did last year because Julio was on the other side. But Julio, he missed 6 games?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I had Ridley last year, and he did great for me.
Yeah, I had Calvin Ridley as well last year in one of my leagues, and I mean he was my MVP of my team. And then Debo, the injury question for him, if he can stay healthy, he demands a lot of targets.
He's a monster, man.
He's a guy that does not like going down, and that's probably one of the reasons why he keeps getting hurt. But when he plays, he's a fighter, and I really like him. Darren Waller, I mean, you can speak upon him. He's one of the best tight ends in the league.
Yeah.
He's just a fantasy monster at the tight end position. Him, Kittle, and Kelsey are the top 3, and no one else is really on the same level as them.
Now, Isaac, I will say you got to keep an eye on tight end number 2 for the Raiders, Foster Monroe. I was at Allegiant Stadium last weekend when they were doing the scrimmages. Man, he looks good. Last year, he tore an ACL, dealing with some injuries. I think this year is going to see a lot more targets coming his way with a lot of attention that Darren Waller is going to receive because they like to run 2 tight end sets.
Yeah, and I mean that he could possibly come out and be a guy that you stream once in a while. It's kind of like that wait and see game. The receivers are all, up in the air as well. You hear hype around, Bryan Edwards at times. Henry Ruggs is still a former first-round pick. So these are guys that haven't really established themselves. So he definitely has the opportunity, but we'll just have to wait and see. And then CeeDee Lamb is his other receiver.
I love CeeDee Lamb. I see him, over 1,000 yards easily this year. So.
Yeah, and he almost topped it last year. And, most of the season he's playing with Andy Dalton.
Yep.
And in those games that Dak, played, those first 3-4 games, CD looked like he could possibly finish as a top 25, top 30 wide receiver right off the bat. And he obviously has the skill set to do so. And I think he's a more gifted receiver than Amari Cooper. I could see this as the season where he does take over as the wide receiver one. If he doesn't, so be it. He's still going to be a great fantasy wide receiver this season.
All right. And then Buckner.
Yeah, kicker and defense are solid.
All right. Thank you so much for sending that. Of course, everyone out there watching, if you guys have questions, fantasy football, go ahead and leave those in the comments and we'll answer them for you. All right. We have another question from Seahawks33 from YouTube. Sermon or Robbie Anderson as my flex?
Well, week one, Robbie Anderson, because right now San Francisco has Raheem Mostert. They really believe in him. This looks like it's probably the last season where he's going to be given the RB1 opportunities. Sermon's definitely the future. There's other running backs that they like Jeff Wilson and Wayne Gallman as well. So I could see this as a season where it takes week 12, week 13, kind of like how Cam Akers did it last year, where we really didn't see much of him. We just saw flashes of him, but not as far as consistency. We didn't see it until the end of the season. So I would wait on Sermon, but if it comes like week 8, week 9, and he still hasn't touched the ball a ton, you might want to drop him. As far as dynasty, lock it in, keep him. He's the future for that team.
All right. Thank you so much, Seahawks33, for the question. Of course, if anybody else out there watching us or listening to us, if you guys have a question, make sure you guys leave it in the comments. All right, Isaac. What about a running back that not a lot of people are talking about, but you see a humongous potential for him to have a big year?
I kind of touched on it earlier. People are actually high on Gibson, so I'm going to go away from him. A lot of people are sleeping on Deandre Swift as well. He had a really good season last year as a rookie. Not a lot of people thought that he would have the season that he did. Now he battled through, some injuries, but he had a very high touchdown rate. Let me find it real quick. Yeah, so on 114 carries, he still managed to carry the ball into the end zone 8 times. And if you look at the guys outside of Swift in this offense, TJ Hawkinson, and then who else? Their wide receiver room is very thin. Do you believe in an Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brashad Perriman, Tyrell Williams, Quintez Cephas? I don't. So I could see DeAndre Swift really taking a big leap this season. As long as he stays healthy, because he did miss three games last season. A lot of people are high on rookie Javonte Williams. I think he's the clear favorite to be the future running back. But Melvin Gordon still put together a great season. He's on a very lucrative deal, so why not run the wheels off of him?
Yeah,
I could see Gordon, staying as the running back 1 for most of the season. Some thoughts on Galladay? Well, personally, I don't trust him because I drafted him 3rd round last season, and he didn't play much because he had that one injury. But same thing with him as far as we were talking about McCaffrey. There was a time of last year where it was like he's ready to come back, but he's deciding not to come back for his future health. And then what do you know? We see a hamstring injury. Hamstring injury.
Yeah, and he's dealing with an injury right now, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I think it's the hamstring.
It's the hamstring.
Still. Yeah, and those hamstrings they come back to haunt you. I don't know, the pass catchers around him on that offense kind of scare me, but he did get a lot of money, so he should be the wide receiver 1 if healthy.
I won't say the name, but Galladay has a hamstring injury already. Color me shocked. Yeah. All right. What about Najin Harris, running back for Pittsburgh Steelers?
He's going to have a heavy workload. I don't care if that offensive line isn't great. He's going to see a ton of touches. And he's the guy that, comes into the league a little bit older. So I'm not as high on him as far as dynasty goes because I could see him having a short career. But look at the other running backs on that team. Benny Snell's not going to eat into his carries.
No.
Anthony McFarland's not going to eat into his carries. He was a dominant running back. He finished 5th or 6th in Heisman voting last season.
Yeah.
On the best offense in the whole nation. So, the whole offseason they were like, hey, Pittsburgh's going to draft him. Pittsburgh's going to draft him. This is the guy that they always wanted, and this is a guy that they're going to really, utilize in their offense.
Yeah, I agree. Najin Harris is RB2 floor with RB1 upside. I think he's going to have a big year for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
All right. We got Seahawks 33. Bench Anderson, Michael Carter, Devontae Smith, Edwards, Trey Lance, Callaway, Ertz.
Zach Ertz.
I don't know. Let's talk about Zach Ertz.
All right.
Well, do you see him being in Philly the whole year? You see a possible trade? I think he's going to get traded.
Well, Philadelphia has been trying to trade him all off season, and no one wants him.
They're
banged
asking too
up.
much for him, though. They're asking way too much.
I mean, he is just 2 seasons away, or 2 seasons from being kind of an elite tight end.
Yeah, I
mean, he's so banged up at this point in his career. It's hard to trust him. He dyed his hair blonde to kind of remodel himself, make himself look like a new tight end. I don't know. There's not a lot of weapons in Philly's offense, so I could see him being used a lot, and I can see him cutting into Dallas Goedert's potential for this season. They're another team that likes to use multiple tight ends. We've seen it when Zach Ertz was elite. You had Trey Burton, getting a lot of production as well. So
I actually missed the first question from Seahawks 33. So this is rate my team 14-man PPR: Lawrence, Diggs, Julio, Barkley, Swift, Trotman, Sermon, and then that was his bench right here: Anderson, Michael Carter, Devontae Smith, Edwards, Trey Lance, Callaway, and Ertz.
Michael Carter's interesting because the Jets have, 3 or 4 running backs that you could see may take over as the running back one. Tevin Coleman.
Yeah, well, let's keep in mind that they're going to run a similar offense to what the Niners are doing right now in San Francisco.
Yeah, and Michael Carter could be the guy that leads the team in carries, but like you just said, it's hard to trust him when they're going to take a 3 or 4 running back committee approach. Can you pull that squad back up real quick though?
Yes, sir.
I'll go back to his starters.
Let's do right here.
Okay. I'm not a big believer in Lawrence for this season, just because his offensive line is just atrocious. We already saw it in week 1 of the preseason. And, he's a very talented quarterback. He's going to be a star in this league, but it's going to be hard for him to be fantasy relevant year 1. Diggs is obviously solid. Julio has his question marks. Barkley's questionable. We already talked about Swift. Adam Trotman could be a guy that you find later on in the later rounds of your draft that really could, take a big leap this season just because of the lack of weapons surrounding him in that offense. And then we already talked about Trey Sermon. I don't know.
All right.
If I'm being honest, I think the team needs a little work, but
but I mean, in some of these leagues, it doesn't matter who you draft; it's who you pick up.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Your team's going to change so much. You might keep 6 of the 15, 16 guys that you do draft.
Yeah, I had the 14th. Yep.
So you had the turn.
That's tough. All right. Let's see. We got a lot of questions here, so let's get to them. Let's see. Actually, coming from Lazo, I see Slayton with 1K yard season, and Shepard should be solid if Daniel Jones has a Josh Allen type breakout, which he won't. But
no,
but you knew that already.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, the receivers look enticing, the tight ends look enticing, but if Daniel Jones is the quarterback, I mean, how much can you rely on those guys?
Yeah, people want Ertz, but Philly wants too much. Exactly.
Yep.
Let's see. Thunder. Honestly, I think Barkley and Diggs are not my favorite first, second round picks. I'm guessing you were, 13th pick? It was 14th. All right. Let's see. Diggs is already injured, which might linger. Is he dealing with a hamstring injury or what? What is it? Because I didn't see it was hurt, but I could be wrong.
Well, you look away for 12 hours and things change dramatically.
Well, look,
Um,
here's the thing. So obviously, this past weekend was the first weekend of the preseason. My daughter just started school today. It's been crazy. So I mean, I was watching the games, but I wasn't really paying attention. If that makes sense. I was
mhm.
more watching Coco Melon on YouTube than anything. So
I get it. I get it.
let's see. Yeah, Hammy. I think. Yeah, sounds like
Yeah,
it.
it looks like what I'm reading is he's got a knee issue. So
Oh, well, that's not good. All right. Well, let's move on to the wide receivers. Give me your top wideouts.
okay. Aaron Rodgers is back for Green Bay. So Devontae Adams is a guy that I'm going to heavily target. Late first round, maybe even as high as the 7th, 8th pick. There's not much argument there.
Yeah.
He topped every receiver last year in fantasy points, and he played in 14 games. I mean, the guy's a monster. There's no one in that offense is really going to eat into his target. So, and this is the last, not the last dance, but what are they calling it for Green Bay right now?
Well, that's what they're calling it. Is the last dance.
Yeah, they
So
had a different nickname for it. It was the last something, but Devontae's locked in as my wide receiver one. Tyreek Hill is right behind him. There's not another wide receiver in Kansas City's offense that Pat Mahomes likes to target heavily. Obviously, Travis Kelce, he does target heavily, but are we going to rely on a McCole Hardman or a Demarcus Robinson to kind of take over and see increased loads? Maybe a
no,
little bit, but
I don't think so. But
those two are, consistently the top two in my rankings each and every
yeah.
week. I had Stephon Diggs in the top 5. I guess I got to look into that injury a little bit more. And then I have DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley rounding up my top 5 with, Justin Jefferson and guys like DK Metcalf and Keenan Allen right behind them.
All right, give me a name of a player that a lot of people are drafting high, but you might see a problem with them having a big year, or I guess a player that's going to disappoint.
See, I don't know if this is a for sure disappointment year for either one of these guys, but drafting either Chris Godwin or Mike Evans could turn out bad just because there are so many weapons on that team. And we saw it work last season.
Yeah,
But, Godwin dealt with injuries. Half the year,
the
Antonio
whole
Brown
year,
wasn't
pretty
there.
much. Yeah,
Yeah. So if
and
he stays
let's not
healthy,
forget Isaac also. OJ Howard's coming back off that
yeah,
torn
but
ACL.
I thought it was an Achilles, though. Wasn't it Achilles?
Achilles or ACL, you might be
If it's
right.
Achilles, he's not going to be the same. But I mean, he's still
young.
a good, yeah.
Yeah,
And then
young.
Cameron Brate, each and every season somehow finds a way to be kind of relevant as well. And they brought in Giovanni Bernard, which isn't like it doesn't seem like a big deal,
It's not
but
the sexiest pickup. No,
it's not. But Tom Brady's always had a Deion Lewis, a James White, and now he has that in Tampa Bay and Giovanni Bernard. So he's going to see more targets as well. And then, Gronk's still on the team, and Antonio Brown is on the team. And then, youngsters like Scotty Miller and that Tyler, what was it?
Tyler Johnson, I believe.
Yeah.
Johnson, last name Johnson, number 19.
Yeah. So there's just so many weapons on this team. And I'm not saying that Mike Evans is going to have a bad year or Chris Godwin will or Antonio Brown will, but don't be surprised if one of those guys does.
Just because there's only one football to throw around. So
exactly. But I mean, the GOAT is passing it around. So
all right. Well, give me a sleeper at the wide receiver position.
Okay. I don't know if he's really considered a sleeper, but I'm pretty high on Brandon Iuke. We talked about how Debo is a dog and he demands a lot of targets, but Brandon Iuke last season in 12 games saw 60 receptions go his way for 748 yards. He's a very similar player to Debo, and if Debo does, suffer injuries again, I mean, who knows with the 49ers? But if Iuke can stay healthy and, one guy in that offense, whether it's Kittle or Debo, gets injured, like Iuke could really take off. And he's a guy that, once he touches the ball, he could take it. He's very shifty. He makes a lot of defenders miss. That iconic, touchdown reception where he raced the defender all the way to the end zone and jumped over him at the end. I mean, he's freakishly athletic. There's a reason why he was a first-round draft pick last year, and I could just see him as a guy that really takes over as the lead receiver on this team.
Thundercat Smith. I'm not going to say the word. My answer to the question is any Vikings player under 70% vaccinated, no reschedules due to COVID. Vikings are at a serious risk of having to forfeit games this year. Not just them. There's a lot of teams out there. The only fully vaccinated football team right now is the Atlanta Falcons. That news today.
Today, yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, let's move on to the tight ends, Isaac.
Okay. The tight ends are always, they're always risky. Once you get outside that, that top tier, who knows what's going to happen after that? A lot of people didn't see Robert Tonyan finishing as the tight end 3 last season.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people saw TJ Hawkinson finishing top 5. There was a lot of doubters in Noah Fant, and he was very inconsistent. He finished as the tight end 9. So once you get outside of the top 3, which I'll list them in order for right now, it's no surprises. Well, you won't be surprised by the order, but some people might not like Darren Waller at number 2.
Hold on. So let me just guess what you're going to say.
All right. Well, I already kind of said it, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, you're going to go Kelsey, George Kittle, Darren Waller.
No.
You got Darren at 2?
Yeah.
Excellent.
I got Darren at 2 simply because I like the pass catchers outside of George Kittle in San Francisco's offense, and they're not a pass-heavy team.
Mm-hmm.
I just talked about Iuke. If Debo stays healthy, he's gonna see a lot of targets.
And a lot of it is going to depend on who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Niners. Is it going to be Jimmy Garoppolo or is it going to be Trey Lance? Look, that situation, not to kind of change subjects and whatnot, but just really quick. I mean, it just reminds me of when Russell Wilson was drafted by Seattle. And they had Matt Flynn, I believe it was. I might be wrong, but I think it was Matt Flynn.
Matt Flynn. He came off of that great, week 17 performance.
Yeah, with Green Bay, with the Packers, right? So, so you had all this hype on that, but Russell Wilson won the job during the preseason. Now I could see a similar situation with the Niners. Not sure if it's going to happen or not, but I mean, look, you got the fans excited. He threw an 80-yard pass, right?
Something ridiculous like that, yeah. So. And then, I mean, he went like 5 for 14, but his receivers dropped the ball 4 times. So really, his stats didn't look as good as. I mean, he looked calm in the pocket. He's definitely going to be a great quarterback once he does get the chance. But I don't know if it will come this season. I mean, you could say the same thing with Justin Fields over in Chicago.
Yeah,
these guys could start week 1. Are their coaches going to allow that? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. So, all right. So back to the tight ends.
But yeah, like I said with Kittle, I mean that's a run-heavy offense that's not going to pass the ball a ton. So that's why I like Darren Waller more. We saw what he did last season as the second consecutive season of over 1,100 receiving yards. He had 107 receptions and 9 touchdowns. He had that injury that people were kind of freaking out about for a little bit, but I mean it seems like everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah, and there's not. I mean, he's the clear top target in that offense.
Oh yeah,
with that catchers go.
Oh yeah,
and George Kittle should be, but will he? I don't know. So that's why I have Kittle at 3. It could go either way, really. I think Mark Andrews is safer than TJ Hawkinson, but I think Hawkinson has a higher ceiling just because of the amount of talent surrounding him. He's also dealing with an injury right now, but if he stays healthy, he could be Jared Goff's, security blanket, the guy that he, targets when anything goes wrong, and he's going to have a lot go wrong while he's playing in Detroit. But yeah, I like Mark Andrews. He's been a safe guy the past few years, and then everybody wants to hear about Kyle Pitts. What do you think of this rookie?
Well, I had a draft yesterday, and he was taken pretty high. I think he's going to have a big year. I honestly do. I see him catching at least 10 touchdowns.
Wow.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a big role in that Atlanta Falcons offense this year.
I mean, he could. I think he's going to have a big role. But I have him as my tight end 6 in my rankings right now, but his ceiling is high and his floor is not, that much lower than that.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. He's still a rookie, and he could break, the rookie records,
I think
and
he's going to.
still finish at tight end 5, tight end 6. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just how it could work.
Yeah.
And then once you get past him, I mean, things really just take a turn. You're looking at guys like Tunyon and Fant, Dallas Goedert, guys that have the potential, but they aren't really the surest picks. Like
Okay.
Tyler Higbee without Gerald Everett in L.A.
Yeah.
He could really be serviceable this year, but it's kind of that unknown. So once you get through there, the guys are kind of they're hit or miss. Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, Irv Smith Jr. could really break out this season. Jonnu. I mean, you don't really know after that.
All right. So what about a tight end that stock is high now, but you're not sure if they're going to be able to rise to expectations?
Adam Trotman. Everything's there for him. Everyone's heard around him, but we don't know much about this guy. I mean, he was a rookie last season. He was graded as PFF's top tight end blocker last season. Does that mean he's going to be dynamic in the passing game? Who knows? He had 2 tight ends playing above him last year, Jared Cook and Hill. So we didn't really see much of him, and there's all this hype surrounding him, and it's also that unknown factor. Like, if he does break out, I mean, I wouldn't be totally shocked. If he doesn't do much, I won't be totally shocked. I'm kind of uncertain on his part right now.
All right. What about a sleeper?
A sleeper. I would say Cole Kmet, but I'm a Bears fan, and I don't really know if that'll actually happen.
That's
So
all right.
I'll stay away. I'll stay away from that.
All right.
I think Gerald Everett could be a sleeper. This is kind of just on the top of my head. Seattle doesn't have an established tight end on that team. He's split time with Tyler Higbee throughout his career. He's done well. I mean, as far as a guy that's playing next to another tight end that's very similar. You have DK Metcalf and you have Tyler Lockett, and then who else? I mean, you have a bunch of guys that could step up. You have that rookie in Eskridge. David Moore's not on the team anymore. So Gerald Everett could see, the red zone targets like Jimmy Graham did when he was in Seattle. Obviously not the same player he was in New Orleans, but, catching like 10 touchdown passes in a season. I don't know if Gerald Everett's going to do that, but I think he'd be a guy that you could possibly pick up, that could really step up this season.
Yep. All right. Well, let's move on to the defense.
I don't really look into the defenses that much. I think they're boring. If you have, the Rams, if you have the Rams or Buccaneers, you're probably fine. Outside of that, there's not a lot of certainty. The Colts were great last season. They could really, drop off this season. Chicago was great 2 seasons ago, and last year in fantasy, they weren't really relevant. You could say Pittsburgh, but if they have an offense like they did at the end of last season, the defense is gonna take a hurting. They're gonna trail a lot of games just because they're on the field so much, and that's what happened with my Bears. The offense was so bad that the defense was on the field so much that they weren't fantasy relevant.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, let's show the kicker some love really quick. I know it's another boring position, but they do give you points.
They give you points. And who did you draft in your most recent draft?
Justin Tucker.
Okay. And then outside of that, I don't really know. I mean, Justin Tucker, and then you kind of just look at what I do is I look at what offense is very hot, but doesn't, capitalize as far as touchdowns go.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen I don't want to keep talking about the Bears, but
go ahead. It's all right. It's
but
you follow.
Chicago had a very bad problem scoring touchdowns last season. So what happened? Cairo Santos kicked a lot of field goals. He broke Robbie Gould's record of consecutive field goals made in the season quietly. You look at those teams that can get down the field but can never punch it in, and it's not always the the team that scores the most points. You have a Harrison Butker, making 7 extra points, but then you got who is it? Carlson for your team?
Yep, Dan Carlson
kicking 3 field goals, and he outscores Butker, and that's why Justin Tucker is a safe pick, and it also depends on where you are in the draft. I mean, if you're the 5th team selecting a kicker, you're going with the 5th kicker that you like the most.
Yeah. All right, and then we got Jerry Martinez. Hope you're doing well, bro. Should we draft rookie wide receiver Chase, D. Smith, and E. Moore?
Jamar Chase, yes. I don't know if he's going to take over as the team's wide receiver 1, though. T. Higgins looked very good last season, especially in the latter half of the year. Tyler Boyd is still very consistent wide receiver. So I'm not as high on Chase as a lot of people are, but I still really like him, especially in Dynasty. Devontae Smith has a better opportunity than he does, just because, the receivers surrounding him are Jalen Reagor and Arcega-Whiteside and Travis Fulgham. And I mean, guys that really haven't made a huge name for themselves. So I like Devontae Smith if he can gain some weight. I mean, he's already battling injuries, and I mean, you get pictures of his calves and they look like people's wrists. So that's kind of scary. I love Elijah Moore. I love him, but I don't know about this season. You got a rookie head coach. You got, probably a rookie. You got a rookie quarterback. You probably have a rookie running back. The offensive line is young. He's another guy that I think is a great player for Dynasty. He could take over. I mean, but I'm not targeting him unless I'm taking a chance on him in the later rounds of my draft.
Got it. All right, Isaac, before I let you go, anything else that you would like to highlight for fantasy football?
Right now, I'm doing a 15-round fantasy mock draft series. I've already completed an article where I selected number 1 overall, and then I went through my whole draft, explained my picks, my reasonings. I just posted today part 2 where I picked number 2. I'm going to go through every the pick in the draft. I'm going to go 3, 4, all the way down. So my team's going to look a lot different when I'm drafting, 10th, 11th, 12th. So it's going to be a 12 article series. So go to the East West Football Network and check that out. Also go on there for any other fantasy articles that you want to look at. I post regularly, and you can tweet me, message me on Twitter at Durham23 if you have any questions. I'm happy to help.
Yeah, and then if you guys do have any questions moving forward, you can leave the comments on this video, or you can contact Isaac directly on social media. Isaac, thank you so much for joining me, man. It's been fun.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, everyone out there that's watched, was listening, thank you so much for doing so. You guys have a great night. We'll talk to you soon.